Yeah. So I'm still suffering from a bit of inflammation, as you may have noticed in my last video. You can see it in my cheeks, see? But I'm here anyway. I'm just trying to have a little bit of a sense of humor about it. Um, yeah. I ate some really good Thai food, and I think that might have been the culprit of throwing my system into this inflammation attack. Anyway, um, I want to elaborate on just this concept of navigating life and relationships while being spiritually minded. Like, I just want to offer this framework because it really worked for me. And I alluded to it in my last video near the end, where I had shared my whole, like, what I had been through, basically with this, like, soul bonded relationship that I encountered in this lifetime that didn't amount to much in the 3D, but lived, like, very strongly in my psyche and in my energy body for a long time. And how I used that to do my shadow work. Well, I alluded to the fact that I wasn't only doing that in that relationship, I was also doing it in any relationship I had, using the relationship as an indicator of my shadow work. And I just wanted to explain that in more detail because that would be useful for anybody, really. Well, anybody that this method would call to. You know, I'm not saying that this is what everyone should be doing. I'm saying, like, if this makes sense to you and you want to experiment with it and see how it works for you, then it works for you. Great. Glad we talked about it. Okay, so I'm just feeling like this is the next step because, like, the way I've been going lately is, like, I've been asked to slow down, which was, you know, there have been many other times where I've been kind of nudged to slow down, and in the past found it much more difficult. And I can see that I've made progress, but it's still a little bit difficult, right? Like, I want to have a plan. I want to know what I'm working for and doing, and, like, I only know that generally right now. Like, I want to know, like, what action steps I'm meant to be taking so that I can, like, focus on those every day. But this has been more about, like, getting me back into my feminine energy, and feminine energy receives. So it's not time to take action, right? And so as I slip back into my feminine energy, then I get the impetus to take action again, which is to make this video, which is just that the next step was revealed to me, right? So I am letting my feminine side get informed with an inspiration, right? A download, an intuition. And in this case, it was, oh, I should elaborate on the process of using relationship to heal. And then my masculine side can now take the inspired action, right? I was inspired. I knew that was the thing to do because I was intuitively shown. And I trust my intuition because I've already tested all that, you know, years prior to now, just known that I need to trust my intuition, that it's my best guidance, and that I don't need to test that anymore, you know? So I trust my intuition, and then I enact my masculine side, which takes action. And then here we are making this video. So that's one thing. And that when I say, like, we're going to talk about just navigating life while being spiritually minded, that's it. That's the formula right there. Being present, and then being in feminine energy, which is receptive for any inspirations or intuitive nudges or downloads. and then using the masculine energy within to take the action, to strategize, and to figure out the best mode of action. It's an improper use of the masculine energy to question the feminine inspiration, right? I used to do that. That's how I know. Because it was quite damaging to my feminine side, because I didn't, that part of me didn't feel seen or even valued. And in actuality, that part of me is going to get me where I'm meant to go in this lifetime. And if I ignore that, then I will miss all the things that I'm meant to do. So now I don't use my masculine side to question and try to logic my way out of what my intuition has told me. I just do it. I just know that my masculine side's role is to just take the best route, right? Like today, my masculine side could be responsible for putting my hair up in the ponytail before I got on camera, burning some sage, looking at the clock to make sure I have enough time before I have to go, start my day, because I have an appointment with a friend who's going to be picking me up. And that was a good use of my masculine energy, right? All right, so, and then the purpose of the talk is just to elaborate on this concept, which I was going to make a class on once upon a time. It's listed on my website. It says coming soon, possibly. Hold on, I have to cough. Excuse me. But I didn't feel like making those. I didn't get inspired to make those classes, right? So we're just going to do it in this talk. And I'm going to mention some concepts that may be helpful in order to like prop up some premises that are worth understanding in order to get the bigger picture of why this is working and how, and why it can be helpful. Okay, so first of all, like, when I started this journey, I was oftentimes, just like anyone generally in society that might be like in your vicinity or that you've grown up with or you've gone to school with or at your workplace, I was just like looking around, basically like judging a lot of people, thinking that some people's mindsets, some people who do dumb shit were dumb and not just traumatized, which now would be, I think, a more appropriate thing if I needed to label them. But it's sort of like removing the judgment has removed my need to label anybody as any of those things anymore. Although sometimes you'll see me use words like good, bad, or dumb because I'm expressing my preferences. So that might not be clear when I use those words, and that's why I do want to pay attention to that and clean up the way that I express, because if I just say good and bad, it could be construed as a moral judgment that I'm making, when in actuality I'm just trying to express my preferences, so I should say that, I should say that instead. But it does take a lot more words to say that, right? So you'll find that a lot of times, most recently, you'll see me say good, bad, or whatever, and what I actually mean is my preferences, okay? But they're my preferences. And it's not meant to be a judgment of God's divine plan and orchestration. But I could definitely see how it would be taken that way. If you took it out of context of what I was saying, or just misunderstood my intentions because I wasn't clear enough, All right, so I was going around judging people, and I had a lot of, really strong feelings. Like, there's things like that that some people are participating in on Earth, and we know they're wrong, right? Right? We know they're wrong. We know it's wrong to harm somebody. We know it's wrong to steal from somebody. We know it's wrong to physically harm ourselves or another. We know it's wrong to restrain somebody against their will, and all these kind of things, right? Like sexual abuse, wrong. These are things that are happening on earth, so they are part of this divine orchestration, right? If you go up big enough to the big enough picture, you may see the reasons and stuff, but like immediately here on this 3D level, these situations that we're looking at aren't always so blatant like that, right? So this work that I'm going to talk about can be done on those things that I just mentioned, the things that we all know are wrong. You can do the work on those things, and it is helpful to do that, but I think that's more of an advanced class, right? So if you're just starting out, I think it's better to start with things like your personal judgments. Like you know that a bunch of people are okay with wearing purple, but you hate people who wear purple, or you think it's the worst color ever, And that's like kind of a silly example, but like say it's something like people who don't use their manners, or don't hold the door for somebody else, or cut people off in traffic, and think of all the things about other people that trigger you, that to have a strong reaction. Maybe you have followed somebody into a store and they didn't hold the door for you. And so as you're walking, the door is like, you're right behind the person, but the door is like closing on you. Or actually, that wouldn't be a good example. The door's closing right as you come up to it, right? They didn't decide to stop and hold the door for you. Well, if you feel like assaulted, like if you're willing to take that personally, then this is a beautiful gift, because it tells you that you have something lodged in you. Now, especially if you're willing to take this personal and you know that's a pattern of doing so. Like this always happens, or people are so rude, things like that come out of your mouth in response to these situations can tell you that this is something that you're holding on to as a grudge. And you're probably having more experiences that match it because of that. And it's not that you would never have another experience like this when you fully healed. It's just that if that ever happens to you after you've fully healed, you wouldn't take it personal. Like if I was walking up to a door and somebody didn't hold the door for me, I would assume that they didn't realize I was there. They were in their own world. Maybe they are deaf. There are a multitude of reasons why that person may not have been in the presence of mind to think of my needs, and I want them to be dealing with their needs. They know what's important to them. They know what's pressing on them. I mean, certainly I've been in my own little world and not noticed things or people around me at times in my life. So I'm going to allow that for other people as well, right? But we're just still going to use this example. So say somebody does this, they don't hold the door for you, and you feel this judgment come up about like how people are so rude, okay? So you are actually projecting. You're putting this uncomfortable feeling that you have and pinning it on the other person, like it's their fault. They're the rude one. And so what I'm suggesting, that whenever this is happening in any relationship we have or any encounter with another being, even if it's a stranger, that we notice that we've just identified something in our existence, in our experiences, in our day-to-day life that is not acceptable to us. And that we take personal and that we have a judgment against. And you might not identify it as, oh, I have a judgment at first. It might just be, oh, I don't accept this. This is not okay. But you'll kind of have to inquire upon yourself and look at your own patterns to see how you can identify it. Because remember, we're looking to do that first step of acknowledge. So once you can do that, once you acknowledge that here's something that is bothering me, now I'm going to ask that you turn it back in on yourself and for the next step of validation. okay, well, why would I feel this way? Why would I feel that this person is so rude just because they didn't hold the door for me? Now, we might be tempted to rationalize this away or just like adjust our view without doing all the steps. And I want to caution us against that, just because it could be a way to bypass and adapt behaviors that could actually have a valid emotion attached that needs to be processed before we do that. So when we are doing these things to heal, when we're actually noticing these patterns in order to heal, we want to do all the steps of healing. We don't want to bypass it. So let's look at what this entails. Teal Swan has this wonderful step that she mentions in her completion process, which I, upon utilizing, noticed that it's so powerful because it identifies the loop. So the loop means, like, at some point earlier on in your life, you lodged a judgment or an overwhelm or a misunderstanding about this type of situation, about however you're going to handle whatever feeling is lodged in there. Okay? And these two questions that are the questions that Teal Swan brought to my attention years ago in her completion process video, are helpful to identify this. So when you're validating, you may ask yourself, when was the last time this happened? So it could be just the incident that you're in, right? Or now you're home later and you're processing it. So it's like, oh, yeah, it just happened at the store today. And when was the first time that this happened? When was the first time that I felt like this? Better to go with the feeling, because the experience might not exactly mirror the original experience that lodged it in. So you're in a meditative state and you're asking yourself, when was the first time I felt this way? Now, some of us will flash back to a memory immediately. Sometimes it won't be the earliest memory, but it will be a memory that we have, whatever it is for you. If you can't flash back to a memory, that's okay. Still go on. Like, maybe you can just use your intuition to guide you through the validation process on, like, okay, well, why would I have this judgment? Why would I feel like have felt jaded when I found the door wasn't being held for me? Maybe you're flashing back to a time in childhood where you're going into school after being on the playground and there are some kids that were teasing you, and instead of holding the door for you, they notice it's you, and then let the door close in front of you. So you're associating the door not being held for you with some children that were teasing you on the playground. You see? So it's like, validate yourself on why you're having this reaction. It's like, oh, yeah, because my psyche is associating that situation with these feelings of like being excluded and picked on and thought lesser of and made a joke out of and things like that. And so now it's like, accept that this is the case. Like, I am a person who experienced this thing where some kids made the child version of me feel lesser. And how did that feel? So now you want to be present with the feelings. I felt sad. I felt helpless. I felt like I wanted to win their approval, or I wanted to run away and go home. I felt alone, you know? And so let those feelings come up, be present with these feelings. And it's just like allowing them to be there with no wish for them to be different, no need for someone else to save you from them. Just like you're the like parent version of yourself, parenting this child version of yourself who's allowed to be there and allowed to feel the way that they felt when it originally happened. And those feelings can be with you as long as they want. They can just be with you indefinitely. It's like you're allowing it in. So what you're doing is, like, say that experience was looping in your psyche. Now you are taking that energy right back into yourself and like integrating it. So now when you're walking through life, because it's already integrated, you'll automatically have compassion for that situation instead. Compassion replaces it when you have been present with and loved the part of yourself who felt that way. And so now if you were going to project anything onto the other person who didn't hold the door for you, it would be compassion. Because you have compassion for yourself in that situation, you will also have compassion for them. Do you see how this will immediately improve the quality of your relationships with everybody, including strangers? It's like giving someone the generous assumption that they're doing their best, whatever it is, whatever they're going through, however they've been treating you. Like, you don't know what's going on with them. Like, it's up to us now to take whatever the experience has to offer us and apply it to ourselves. And even if it was an experience that we were enjoying. So that's one example. Say it's an experience that we're enjoying. This is also something where if we attribute our happiness to someone outside of ourselves, like, oh, I'm always happy when I'm with that person. It's like, no, actually you have that ability to be happy all the time, but you're just attributing it to that person. So can you integrate your happiness? Take it back, validate why you think that they're the ones that are making you happy. Well, I feel like that because they tell funny jokes and I always laugh and I feel more free. It's like, okay, well, when's the last time this happened? When's the first time this happened? And maybe you remember back to like a time with your grandfather, and your grandfather was very like funny and always cracking jokes, but you felt very safe and comforted in their presence. And now your grandfather has died or something like that, right? And so you with that went your like ability to feel those feelings of happiness and joy. So it's like validating why ever you have only allowed yourself to feel happy in these certain situations, and then taking that back within yourself, accepting that that's the case. Okay, well, I did that. I limited myself on being happy to when I was in the presence of someone telling me jokes. And now it's like, okay, well, can you be present with that happiness? Can you be the one who's happy without any external permissions or indicators that you should be? Can you just practice having happiness as being present with you? And so now you're integrating happiness. And so now when you want to choose to feel happy, you can access it. Okay, so this is like basically using the relationships and the experiences that we're having to fully integrate ourselves. So they're offering us gifts in these experiences that we're having. And I feel like 3 thoughts just came into my mind all at once, and they kind of like crashed into each other. So hold on. I feel like I lost a couple of them. That was a bit much. Okay. Okay, so you are taking responsibility for what's in your experience, right? You're integrating fully the wholeness of who you are. And you can do this with any relationship that's out there. Okay, the 7 Essene mirrors is a concept that I want to share with you, and I've shared this in many other videos. Greg Braden has a video. It's quite long and it's quite old, but it's on YouTube. And he explains the 7 Essene mirrors. And it's basically knowledge that the Essenes, the ancient Essenes, have passed down to us about the 7 ways that people can be mirroring ourselves back to us. And there are a few that are more common than the others. And so this was the piece of knowledge that helped me understand that I could do this, that I could just take back what was happening in my experience back into myself to like dissect myself. And so you may want to look into the 7 Essene mirrors, because sometimes it's a direct reflection, like you are the thing that you're judging in that moment. And sometimes it's like the thing that you're seeing in that moment is the thing that you've denied for yourself. And like I said, there are 7 of them. So, and some are more common than others, but knowing them is like being ready to see the proper reflection that you're seeing, because it's not always going to be a direct reflection of you. You know, some people are not going to be able to mirror you where you're at. And that's the thing about the soul bond relationship that I was talking about in my last video. It's like, the reason that relationships like that are so powerful is because the mirror is so powerful, meaning the mirror is a direct mirror, meaning the reflection you're getting is going to be something that's in you. That's the twin flame journey. It's like this person can reflect you back to you better than most can. But the same concept can be applied in many relationships. But if you understand that there are 7 different ways, then you can kind of be alert to that it's not always a direct mirror, right? Because we don't want you to be surrounded by people who are mistreating you and others and think that that's a reflection of you somehow. What it could be is a reflection of you allowing yourself to be mistreated. So that's just something to take into consideration. Okay, what are the 2 other thoughts that collided in my mind and I lost at the same time? All right, I'm going to pause for a minute because I heard my phone in the other room and I just want to see what the message is, and I'll kind of give me a chance to have it pop back in my mind if it's going to come back. So I'll be right back. So as we continue on with this process, right, because we have many relationships in our lives, we become more fully integrated. And this means that we don't have these automatic reactions playing out in our lives. You know, like even just like me using the words good and bad, that's programmed. That's habit. And I'm sure you've noticed things in your life where you react habitually. Like this happens and this is how I react. This happens, this is how I react. And these are the things that are literally just programs. You know, our beliefs can be changed. So you're going to live out the byproduct of your beliefs. So if you believe that people suck and you believe everyone's rude, guess what? You're going to experience a lot more rude people. Because you're just going to line up with it because that's in your vibration. You're broadcasting to your reality that you want more experiences of people being rude. So it's like, well, why would you want to believe that if that's what you're going to have to live out and you can change your beliefs? Why wouldn't you change your belief to something that would be more pleasant to experience? And that's basically like the reason why you'd want to do this, because not only are you going to have a more pleasant experience, but also like you become in tune with who you really are because you're shedding off all the things that you're not. Like you're not a programmed response. You're the thing that can get programmed. You know what I mean? And even I would kind of want to say that like even when you're having a programmed response, it doesn't mean that it's you, because it's just an experience you're having, right? So as you do this more and more, you clear more and more, and then you have the ability to be more present. And now you have more freedom, right? Because now you can choose how to respond in situations. And you're also a more pleasant person to be around because you're not starting wars with the others around you anymore. And people around you don't feel judged by you anymore. Even if you were the kind of person who would only say it under your breath, oh, that person's so rude. People can feel energy, you know? So even if your war was silent and you thought it was hidden, some people might have felt it. It was still in your energy, so someone who was paying attention could definitely understand that that was in your energy. So this is a beautiful tool that we all have in our lives, and it's just a tool that involves us becoming self-reflective in the face of every person that we encounter. Every person, every experience that we have is giving us an opportunity to do this. So, and then that puts us in the position to enter into experiences and then like not leave ourselves in the experience. So like we have an experience, an encounter in the grocery store. We've healed all those places where we used to be judgy and take things personal. So now when we have this experience in the grocery store, and maybe like, oh, I don't know, I'm just picturing like an old woman, and she judges you for what you're buying. Maybe she says, oh, that's terrible that you support that company or something like that. Just pretend, okay? It's like if you're a person who's healed and you're not taking things personal, you just like go home and then you take yourself back from that experience. It's like, okay, is there anything here for me to look at? No, I'm not bothered. That was an experience that I had. I observed a woman who has some judgments and she wanted to project them on me, but I'm not taking them. So I'm just going to take myself back into myself, remain fully integrated, let her energy go back to her, and that's it. The experience is done. But if I have that experience and I'm not a fully healed person, maybe I take it personal. Maybe I get really upset. Maybe I feel like I'm judged, and maybe I start to question myself and my self-esteem, or maybe I get really angry and say, the nerve of that woman. And maybe I repeat the experience over and over in my head all day long. Maybe I start telling other people and I'm like, oh, you would never believe what happened to me. The audacity of this old woman. And she thought she knew better about what I was buying. And it's like, when that could have just been an experience that you had, if it turns into this something bigger, then it's showing you that there's something in you to heal. Like that experience could be the thing that gets your attention. Like it got so big, right? It got dramatic and big, and it's like, oh, yeah, it's because it's an indicator of something, an experience that you're having because of an energy that you have. So there's something for you to learn about it, to understand, or to process through. And once you do that, then you'll be free of those kind of situations. And wouldn't that be lovely, right? Wouldn't it be lovely if you could just have an experience like that and then walk away from it and never have to consider it again? And not deem every person in the world as, a rude human because of that one experience. And you know what? When you have when you're fully healed and you have an experience like that, right, with this, hypothetical older woman in a grocery store judging you for what you buy. If you're fully healed, you're just present. You're not defensive. You're just like, oh, maybe you acknowledge her as a person and say, oh, thanks, I'll take it into consideration. Or, oh, thanks for sharing what you think. Or, interesting, Whatever your response is, it's not going to start a war because it's not, you don't feel the need to defend yourself, And so what this offers that person is the ability to see themselves in the space that you've provided. Because it didn't turn into a war, or you didn't push back or anything like that, now this person can reflect later when they go home and they go, oh, well, I told that person that they weren't buying a good thing, but they didn't seem to mind. They didn't seem to care. Like maybe they have to check themselves and decide, oh, well, maybe I don't have a say over other people, or oh, maybe it's not my job to save other people, or oh, maybe it's good for them, or maybe I was misinformed, or, where did I get this information? Maybe it's not something that I should be doing, or maybe I need to do it in a different way. Maybe I'll make little stickers or flyers about this product so that people can be informed about it and take it more seriously, or read it later and they don't feel like I'm attacking them. Whatever it is. But like, if you don't start a war with somebody, they have a lot better chance of reflecting on themselves and their own situation. Because if I'm reacting in one of my, programs, and then somebody else reacts in their program, and now we're like butting heads, like that's just a war, and nobody has room for self-reflection. Nobody has room to see themselves in that situation. So it's a perpetuation of the energy that was initially misunderstood or deemed too overwhelming to process. So you're always going to be better off. Well, in these cases, I won't say that. I'll say in these cases, this is like something where you'll have to look back on it to reflect on the situation that you've already been through in order to heal it. So let's add that if that does happen, if you have a reaction, like you get triggered, someone else is triggered, and then you get triggered. If this happens, you're probably going to want to withdraw because you're not going to get anything done in that space, and it's like human. If you got triggers, then you got triggers. And if you happen to trigger someone else who's also got triggers, you're both still human. You're both still doing your best. It's a trigger. It means it went like that. But it's another chance for you to notice it and notice the pattern of it. And so when you go home and you're by yourself and you have the space to reflect on it, you can still do that, right? So I don't want to get us into a mode of beating ourselves up that we're not doing it right or that we don't get it all at once. Because when you're in a trigger, whatever age you were that was lodged in your energy is the age that you're reverting to when you're triggered, when that automatic response is happening. So that version of you didn't have all the tools that you have now or the knowledge that you have now. And so it's like a matter of kind of trying to give that version of you the tools so that it can handle them. And so sometimes it's going to take a few triggers before you really get a hold of it. That's just what it is. The fact that you are making an attempt, I think, is a beautiful thing, and you should celebrate that, and or you could celebrate that. I don't want to tell you what you should do. What else? There was another thought here. Why do they keep leaving? Come on, bring that one back. It was a good one. Pause, hold on. Okay, here's what it was. Okay, so when you're triggered and somebody else gets triggered and you're both triggered, yes, you both need space. But say you are fully healed and then you trigger somebody. What I've found is if you don't get triggered, your presence can actually pull someone out of a trigger. Not always, but that's what I'm finding through this kind of just living my life and realizing it. Because it used to be very likely for me to get triggered if one of my family members got triggered. But through healing, through doing this process, it was like in the family was the last place that I could still get triggered. Everyone else really couldn't trigger me, but my family still could for a while. And then I even got clear on that. So now I've found that even with family members, if I do not get triggered, then they can actually be brought out of the trigger through my presence. So I've actually been experimenting and playing with that whole process a little bit, and not playing with them. I'm only playing with my energy and what I can do in those moments, right? I'm only looking to control myself. I'm not looking to, dictate what somebody else needs to or do. I'm just looking at, since I am an alchemizer, what can I do with that? Is there something more that I can do with my energy than just being present, or is being present the most powerful thing? So experiments in progress on that. And that, like I said, can only happen when you're not triggered too. Because like I said, presence is the most powerful thing. I believe it was Kyle Cease who said this thing one time on one of his talks, and I just loved it and it stuck with me. And it was that he was pointing out how if you are interacting with somebody and you have an open heart, one of two things will happen. Either their heart will open too, or they will run away. And I had known, when he said that, I applied it, to my life to see, and it was like, oh yeah, that is true. That is true. So these are wonderful concepts to be aware of when we're navigating relationships, and it feels so empowering to be able to, do our own work, and be given so many gifts through every experience that we have with another being, another reflection of us. And again, this is also why I say that, instead of spending a lot of energy in admiration, that we can be inspired to our own thing, right? Because we don't want to put somebody up on a pedestal, or, it's like everyone is really just a reflection of us. And so that's why when we are passing someone in the street and they're doing something that we don't approve of, that we want to find acceptance for it. Maybe we know it's wrong, but we at least have to accept that it exists, because what if there's some part of us that would have chosen that in the circumstances that that person's in? We don't know what led them there, but maybe we would end up in that same predicament if we were faced with those experiences that they'd had to lead them there. And maybe that part of us wants to know that we would accept that part of ourselves, that we have the ability to unconditionally love and be present with even the darkest, most wrong parts of ourselves and others, because these are human beings, right? Like, even the human beings who are doing things wrong, they are human beings. Something did cause them to go in that direction, And so I think, like, when you look at it in terms of, like, your best protection against something like that affecting you is for you to be in the loving, open-hearted space. So when you can accept that that is the case, then you're going into that neutral space of presence, which is love, which is compassion, which means that it can't harm you. It's a very powerful place to be. So if you like feel hesitant to find acceptance for someone doing something like a heinous crime, remember that that is the most powerful place to be, is in acceptance. You're not doing it because you approve of the behavior and that you want to condone it. You're accepting it because if you hold resistance to it, it is more likely to harm you. Byron Katie tells a story about how her story is that she was very depressed for many years and wanted to end things, I think. Anyhow, she woke up one day enlightened. And she woke up in this space of, like, presence, basically. And she tells a story about, after this, how she was in a situation where she came in contact with a person who wanted to rob her, I guess, and held a gun to her head. And she was present. She did not recoil in fear. She did not try to shame them or blame them or tell them they were wrong. She was just present. And the guy didn't harm her. The guy put his gun down. Her presence was that powerful. So, to me, it's like, I'm just sharing examples of other people, telling you, just because, like, I'm just kind of saying, like, it's not just my experience that has shown this. So it might be worth a try, an experiment for you too, before you decide whether it's true for you or not. And that's like with everything here, because, like, I'm just telling you what's worked for me. I don't know what would work for you, but it's worth a try if you're looking for something that might work for you. Why not experiment? But also, maybe you'll be inspired to something more from what I'm sharing. Maybe you'll be inspired to something that is, that's going to ripple out in another way, or help other people, or, adding two modalities together that works in some way that, I hadn't thought of and nobody else had thought of, So that's all. Let me know what you think, or let me know if you have any questions.